right here at Liberty. Good evening to each of you. It is good to see you all tonight. Welcome to those tuning in on Facebook Live or the replay or podcast or YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel, by the way, if y'all didn't know. And so the cool thing about that is you don't have to, if you're on Facebook and trying to look at older messages, you got to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But on our YouTube channel, they're all just right there, right? All just right there. So check that out if you get a chance. Last week, we started a series called God Frequency, and we're talking about recognizing the voice of God. And as we think about this particular idea, this topic, because Jesus said this is how we're supposed to live, we live by the words that come out of God's mouth, it's something that is a non-negotiable for all of us. For every follower of Jesus, this is a non-negotiable issue. This is one thing that all of us have to learn to do well. Okay, we got to do it well, but we have to learn to do it well. And so tonight is really more of an equipping kind of a night. If you missed the announcement a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so now, I don't know, that as we're getting ready to make room for a Saturday night service at Liberty, that's going to start September the 15th. And so in making room for the Saturday night service, September the 5th, we're going to be closing or ending the Wednesday service, And the thing about that is that as we think about this whole idea of God frequency and hearing God, sometimes it means stepping out into some new things that you haven't done before. And for Liberty, that's a new thing that we haven't done before. And so when we look at a church making a decision like that and believing that, well, this is where God's leading us to go, and in light of the things that we saw this past few nights with Prophet Ruckus McKinley coming and sharing words over people individually, man, it's so important for us to make decisions in life based on what God is saying to us. Based on what God is saying to us. And so this is like something that every single one of us has got to learn how to do. And what I want to do tonight is share a little more of a teaching equipping thing. And I was sharing when we made that Wednesday night announcement that oftentimes I can't get into the depth of equipping I would like to, because it's more conducive to a smaller environment where people can ask questions and you can go back and forth in that kind of setting. We don't necessarily do that here. However, tonight, I'm going to do a little bit of that. So it's going to be more of an equipping, explaining, teaching kind of thing, not so much taking one particular passage of Scripture and elaborating on it. I'm going to be teaching principles, okay, take-home principles as we think about this particular idea of God frequency. And last week we talked about recognizing the voice of God. Tonight we want to talk about increasing your sensitivity to the voice of God. Increasing your sensitivity to the voice of God. And that word sensitivity is huge. It's huge. Sensitivity, that's a very, very, very big deal. The reason why it's a big deal is because God can speak in a lot of different ways. And it's in our nature to want to limit him to a few things that we can predict, so that'll be easier on us to identify when he's speaking. The problem with that is God doesn't fit in any of our boxes. He's a big God. He's going to stay a big God, and he wants us to learn how to walk with him in his bigness. So he's not trying to adjust who he is or what you are expecting, and he's speaking all over here. He can be doing all of this, and you'll go, no, that's not God, because God speaks like this. He's speaking all over here in all these different kind of ways, and you're praying and fasting and seeking God for an answer, for wisdom and all this kind of stuff, and he's speaking, but because he's not doing it right here, you don't think he's speaking. So you say, man, I can't hear God, or God's not speaking to me. God's abandoned me. He's this. He's forgotten about me. And the reality is, no, we have to learn to go here with God. Okay, so when we want in learning to go here with God, where we're expecting him to speak any kind of way, this is about sensitivity. or now I'm learning to be more sensitive to any kind of way he speaks. Okay? Where I can just pick it up. So I want to get into that because there are some things you're going to learn tonight that you're going to be able to put into practice immediately. Are looking at increasing our sensitivity, we have to battle our tendency to want a particular method or particular formula for God to work, okay? And this is a big deal because over and over and over you can hear, whether it's on TV or even live or a podcast or YouTube, whatever, you can hear tons and tons of preachers and pastors and teachers trying to give everyone a method or a formula for how to get from God what they want or what they believe that they need, okay? And when people think that it's all about a method, then they're going to think several things. One, I just need to learn that, and once I learn that, I'll have it. But what happens is when that doesn't work, they just think they're not doing the method right because they're convinced that it's the method that works, okay? So when the method does not work, when they're told this is the method and God speaks over here or he speaks over here and the method does not work, they think that they're not doing the method right. So they keep trying to learn how to get the method right. Or if that, and then you hear someone else say, no, it's not that method, it's this method. And no, it's not that method, it's this method. And the reality is, it's none of them. So it's not about the method, and it's really in our human nature because we want to be able to be in control. So if we have a particular method, we can control the method. When you have people like witches and warlocks and stuff, they have a book of spells and things like that, right? Those are their methods. If I say this or read this, then this is what happens. This incantation, this ritual, this method. When I do this method, then the invisible spiritual powers I'm speaking to, they perform for me. They do actions for me. Okay? You cannot have that mentality as a child of God because God is not going to do tricks for you just because you did a 5-step method. So we end up putting more faith in the method than in the person that we're actually talking to. So when it comes to increasing our sensitivity, we have to kind of recognize within ourselves our tendency to want to put God in a box, our tendency to want to do things one way and just do that, become a master or expert at that, and expect God to produce off of that one method. And that's not how he operates. And so over time, a Christian can get tired of not seeing the results that they're told they're supposed to get. And they can either give up on God, give up on church or whatever, and they'll say, well, I tried the Jesus thing. I tried the Christian thing, and it didn't work. No. You didn't try the Jesus thing. Because the Jesus thing is not right here. It's not a method. He's a person who can speak any kind of way that he wants to. And so instead of learning how to increase your sensitivity to picking up anything that God puts on your radar, you put faith in a method, and when God did not speak that way, you thought he doesn't speak to you anymore. And the devil came in and said, he doesn't speak to you because you've been a bad girl, you've been a bad boy. And all right, now the devil can take that and go all kinds of ways with it just because your method didn't work, because you didn't learn how to be sensitive. And someone taught you to put faith in a method. So we want to talk about sensitivity. It's all about sensitivity. Recognizing his voice, increasing our sensitivity is what helps us recognize when he's talking and however he's talking and in whatever ways he's talking. Look at Hebrews chapter 5, beginning of verse 13. It says this. It says, now everyone who lives on milk is inexperienced with a message about righteousness because he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature, for those whose senses have been trained to distinguish between good and evil. All right, notice that. Whose senses have been trained to distinguish between good and evil. That means that you can learn this, right? So look at the comparison. Those who are infants are inexperienced. Now, he's not talking about physical infants. He's talking about spiritually, right? They're inexperienced. But the mature have learned something. they've learned to train their senses so they can distinguish between good and evil. And I'll submit to you that part of distinguishing between good and evil, and part of this sensing, is hearing God tell you what's good and what's evil. So your senses can grow. I've said it before, you can learn to discern. You can learn to recognize things. So it's not, even though we saw this past a couple of nights, you saw Prophet Ruckus McKinley just rattle off these words for individuals and stuff, and people are like, how do you know that and all that, right? He didn't just wake up one day and start doing that. He's learned to do that over time. So you see this confidence that he has, that this is what the Lord's saying, and boom, 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 and all that kind of stuff. He has learned how to pick up what God is saying about an individual and to share it with confidence. Okay? And so whether it's him or whether it's, if you ever watch Sean Bowles gets words of knowledge for people. Oftentimes he gets them before the meeting, and he's just writing down ideas or thoughts that come to his mind, or even pictures that come to mind. He writes it down even before he gets into the meeting. And then he gets into the meeting, and after he shares his message, whatever he's talking about, he says, is there a so-and-so here? Okay? Very different kind of presentation. It's not like, God is calling Sarah. Where is Sarah right now? It's not that. He has a different kind of approach. He says, is there a Sarah here? Okay, is there a Sarah from Richmond? Are you from Richmond? And oh yeah. And he goes, all the different things that God spoke to him about, and it's that person's facts of their life, and then God speaks, and there's a God encounter. Okay, if you ever hear Graham Cook speak, Graham Cook, he's more laid back. He's probably see him speaking in these orange socks or green socks, no shoes on, and he's just chilling. He's like, isn't God brilliant? He's just brilliant, and he'll just give you a word about your life and this and that. And he's just like laid back. And this word is like rocking somebody, or they're crying. He's just like, yeah, that's brilliant. This is brilliant. All right. He's got this accent. I don't do that accent well. But my point is that these are people who have learned, okay? So before you start just admiring their gifting, what they're doing, you got to know that they've been through a process. They've learned to do it, and you can learn to prophesy as well. Everyone's not going to be in an office of a prophet and do exactly what they're doing as far as traveling around and things like that. But when it comes to decisions you're making in life, you can hear from God. When it comes to people coming across your path, you can hear from God for them as well, right? And you can learn to do that. But the idea is being sensitive. So when learning to recognize God's voice, you want to focus on sensitivity, not a specific method or formula. And the important thing is to expect God to speak and be ready for him to speak in unexpected ways. Be ready for him to speak in unexpected ways, and I would also say unexpected times. Be ready for God to speak when you're trying to do something else. Be ready for God to speak when you're busy. He just does stuff like that. So part of being sensitive is beginning to expect it. Begin to expect it. I said this last week, and when we talk about this topic, I'm probably going to say it over and over and over and over. Get out of your mind that God does not speak to me. I can't hear from God, because you're not expecting. Not only are you not expecting to hear from God, you've like disqualified yourself. Like you go through your whole day not in the most remote way expecting that God's going to speak to you at all. So you're going to miss all kinds of things because you've made up in your mind that God doesn't speak to you. Okay, so let's turn that page, close that chapter, open a new one, and understand that because you're God's child, like Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. Like Paul said in Romans, the children of God are led by his Spirit. Every one of you can hear the voice of God. You can recognize the voice of God. You can trust the voice of God. You can obey the voice of God, every single one of you, but you just have to learn and grow into it. You've got to learn. So increasing your sensitivity is something you have to learn. And I'm saying that over and over because I want you to be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. Don't get upset if you miss it, okay? As you're learning to hear God's voice and you're stepping out, you go, man, I think God told me to just do this. You step out and you go, okay, well, that was not God, right? Now, what's your response to that? Well, I'm never going to try that again, right? That's what the devil wants you to believe. No, your response to that is, well, that wasn't God, but I'm still expecting him to speak to me, and I'm going to learn And I'm going to keep stepping out. I'm going to keep trying. And maybe before I step out next time, let me just maybe run it past another mature brother or sister in the Lord, somebody who by their life and track record has shown that they have learned to discern God's voice, that they have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Maybe I need to run it past them first, but I'm going to learn how to understand and recognize God's voice. But what we're not going to do is be afraid to step out in faith. Okay, we're not going to be afraid of our mistakes. We're not going to be afraid to fall every now and then. We're not going to be afraid to do that. We're going to learn from that. That's part of what it means to fine-tune your sensitivity. I've been wrong a bunch of times when it comes to whether or not it's, if I step out and I thought it was God, wasn't God. A bunch of times. More times than I care to mention here publicly. It's a bunch of times. But then there are other times where I was spot on with what God said and amazing things happen. And I can't forfeit those amazing things for fear of the other times where I miss it. I can't live that way, right? Instead, we're committing to live by his voice, and living by his voice is not an option. So we have one choice. This is it. Learn to do it. Everyone, we have to learn to do it. All right, that's our only option as children of God. Learn to do it. It's not just looking at somebody else and go, well, I'm not going to do it like them, so I'm not hearing God like that. If I'm not hearing God like that, I'm not hearing God at all. Because he doesn't speak to me that way. He doesn't speak to me that. No, he's not supposed to speak to you that way. Okay, so don't compare how you best hear God with how someone else hears God or recognizes God or how they even respond to what God is saying. So I want to mention this because sometimes, matter of fact, I just heard this the other day. I heard it more than just the other day, but I just hear it the other day, that some people say, well, I can hear God better for others than I hear him for myself. How many of you have ever had that? You ever believe that? Okay. Now, so I can hear God better for other people, but it's hard to hear him for myself. Now, there are others who say, well, I can hear him for myself, but it's hard for me to hear him for other people. How many of you are in that category? Yeah, a few of you? Okay, good. So I was talking about this topic and this message. I was meeting with Pastor Richard and Joan and Pastor Lonnell, and we're talking about this whole idea. And Pastor Joan says something. I want to share this quote with you. I put it in the slides. I didn't put it in my notes. Let me go and pull up Pastor Joan's quote. There it is. She said, hearing God for yourself is a discipline, while hearing God for others is a gift. I know, right? That's why I got to put it up here. Now, this is big for a lot of reasons. Okay? Hearing God for yourself is a discipline. Hearing God for others is a gift. So when you're hearing God for other people, that there's a gift that he's operating in you, and it's just flowing. Okay? But when it comes to hearing God for yourself, that has more to do with a discipline you take upon yourself to learn, to pray, to spend time with him. Now, here's why this statement is really, really cool. Because the little poll that I took earlier, both are in this statement. And so the remedy is also in this statement. Okay, so if you're a person, it's so easy for me to hear God for other people, the gift, but it's hard for me to hear God for myself, then you can see how to strengthen that. Because people can be gifted and the gift can flow without you walking with God in intimacy and close connection with him. You can flow in the gifts of the Spirit without a devotional life. So it can be easy for the gift to flow through you, but then when it comes for your life, your decisions, your choices, it's tough because it takes cultivation. You have to cultivate it for you. That's the discipline part. You have to cultivate your connection with God, your communication, more specifically. You have to cultivate it. You have to cultivate it. Because that's about your relationship with him. You have to cultivate it. It's a discipline in hearing him for yourself. You have to pray. You have to spend time with him. You have to cultivate that relationship. But when it comes to a gift for other people, it'll just flow because it ain't about you. It's about them. Okay? Now, if you're the person who you're more comfortable with hearing God for yourself, maybe you do have that devotional life. You're constantly praying, connecting with God, reading your word, reading the Bible, all that kind of stuff. But it's hard to hear God for other people. Then the issue for you, because obviously if you hear God for yourself, you hear God. But there's something in your mind that's blocking the gift. So maybe for you, the remedy is courage. Maybe it's faith. Maybe it's not second-guessing yourself. Maybe it's you need to start to believe that God can speak through you to someone else. So something that could be blocking the gift, but you hear God. Either way, check it out. Either way, you hear God. You might start at different places. You might start being confident. You hear him for yourself. You have to learn how to just flow out for other people, to speak it out. Have the courage of faith to step out and try it. Or you might be comfortable having the courage to step out in faith and try it, and the courage to step out and say what you believe is being said. So you're hearing God, right? But now you got to develop your own walk and communication with him. I absolutely love that statement. Thank you, Pastor Joan. So now that we've established in a kind of a way that we all hear from God, but we can have maybe a different starting place there, I want to talk about this whole idea of perceiving, okay? Because being sensitive to God is all about perceiving. It's all about perceiving, okay? It's all about perceiving. So I want to define what perceiving is. First, let's just say that perceiving is knowing something without using your natural senses. Okay? Knowing something without using your natural senses. So you've got your 5 natural senses: hearing, smell, taste, touch, sight. You have your 5 natural senses, but sometimes you can receive information. You can receive insight. You can receive knowledge that didn't come to you through those 5 natural senses. And so when you're able to know something without using your natural senses, usually you're recognizing that something spiritual has happened. Okay, we do know that there is an invisible realm, or we can't see it for the most part, unless you have that gift or whatever. God opens up your eyes, you can see it. But we can't see it for the most part, but there is an invisible realm. So as we're walking along in the natural realm, seeing things and picking up things, pick up information in the natural world with our 5 natural senses, sometimes our spirit, in our spiritual sense, we can pick up that something happened around us in the invisible world. Okay? Something happened that you cannot see physically, that you cannot hear physically, that you cannot taste or touch or feel physically. Something happened. There was some experience, a spiritual experience happened. You perceive it. Look at Luke chapter 8. In Luke chapter 8, Jesus was walking through a crowd, and there's a woman who's been bleeding for 12 years. She has faith. If I just touch the hem of his garment, right, the hem of his clothes, if I just touch the hem, I'll be healed. So as Jesus is walking through the crowd, a lot of people are bumping into him, but not everyone is reaching out with a faith touch, with a need touch. So this woman is crawling on her hands and knees. She reaches out, touches the hem of his clothes, not his skin, just his clothes. And power comes out of Jesus into the woman. And this is what Jesus says in verse 46. Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me. Now his disciples, in response to that, said, Jesus, okay, that's a crazy observation. We're in a crowd. everybody's touching you. Look, boom, I just touched you. Like everybody's touching you. Everyone's bumping into you. And Jesus goes, no, no, no. See, you're thinking in the natural. You're thinking physical. Something spiritual happened. And even though other people are bumping me, even though I'm in a crowd, someone touched me. And it drew something out of me. Virtue came out of me. He perceived it. He perceived that something spiritual had happened. Yet he knew something without using his natural senses. All right. So then, also, perceiving is recognizing that a thought, a word, action, or event has a spiritual significance, and you understand the meaning. Spiritual significance, and you understand the meaning. So the other night when Ruckers was up here speaking and teaching, there was a kid that came up front, right? And then went back to the seat. And Ruckers said that was prophetic. Okay? Now what's he saying? I see a spiritual significance in what was just a natural occurrence. So we talk about how it was symbolic of the kids being drawn to the gift of the prophetic and things like that. But my point is, it was a natural kind of thing. Like we all saw it, everyone who was here, we all saw it. But he said that was prophetic. And if you didn't see a spiritual significance in it initially, when he said that's prophetic, then you start to think about it, what it could mean and what it could represent. Right? So seeing some things that could be in the natural and seeing spiritual significance to them is perceiving. So it's great when it happens, and then sometimes we miss some stuff. And in Mark chapter 8, there's an example of Jesus' response when his disciples missed some stuff. Okay? So Jesus had just fed thousands of people with a small amount of food. Okay? Now the disciples are on a ship. They were sailing through the sea, and they're like, man, I sure am hungry. And Jesus is like, are you for real? Man, where can we get some food? Are you serious right now? Watch what it says in Mark 8, verse 17. And Jesus was aware of this, and he said unto them, why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Now, what's interesting there, Jesus says, how is it that you don't perceive? You don't see the spiritual significance of what just happened? How is it that I just multiplied food for thousands of people? It just happened. And now you're wondering where you're going to get bread. I don't know why my dad told me to pick you. We're going to leave the gospel of the kingdom in your hands, honey. This is just ridiculous. Right? He says, how is it that you don't perceive? So Jesus is expecting them to get it, right? Then he asks a follow-up question that, based on the context, could be part of the issue to why they don't perceive. Are your hearts hardened? Are you just determined not to believe? Are you determined not to be moved by what you see? Are your hearts hardened? Because if your hearts are hardened, then based on the context, that will hinder you from seeing the spiritual significance. It will hinder you from perceiving spiritual things. It will hinder you from understanding spiritual things. When my Father is sending a spiritual message, if your heart is hardened, this will hinder you from receiving it. Now, these were his own disciples, and disciples means learner. They were learning throughout this process. But my point is, here you see that perceiving is recognizing that a thought, word, action, or event has a spiritual significance and understanding the meaning. And here's an example of how the disciples did not know that. So let's do this. As we kind of begin to wrap this up, I want you to be able to walk out of here knowing what is your primary method quote unquote, of perceiving God. Okay? Not necessarily, I didn't say the only way, but each of us have a primary way that we are perceiving stuff from God. It's not the only way. That's why it's not a method per se. It's not the only way. But there could be a primary way that he speaks to you most frequently. So as you're increasing your sensitivity to recognizing God's voice, it's helpful to know where he leans with you. But at the same time, you want to make sure you're open to anything that he does, anything that he says, in any way that he says it. So as we go through these, you're going to go, okay, that makes sense. That happens to me more frequently than the others, although I also have experience with the others. Okay? So it's very, very likely that all of you will experience all four of these. But it's very, very likely that you'll experience one of them more than the others. Okay? All right. So what is your primary way of perceiving? So let's put the list up there. There's the seer, the hearer, the knower, feeler. Is it? Oh, that's not good. Okay? It's just those four words I just told you, so it's all good. The seer, the hearer, the knower, and the feeler. Okay, so let's define each one of these really briefly. All right, so the seer usually sees pictures in the mind. Okay, so sometimes when I'm talking to a person, sometimes God will tell me how he's been speaking to them more frequently than other areas. And I'll say, do you dream a lot? Yeah, I have a lot of dreams. Because you probably perceive things more with pictures and images, visual, right? And so when you perceive things, these pictures in your mind, when you are asleep, it's called a dream. When you are awake, it's called a vision. If you're sleeping during the day, so I call it a day dream. You're still asleep. Check the folks on your row right now. Just see who's asleep. It's a dream. Now, here's the thing with vision, though. With a vision, let's go to the next slide. With a vision, you can have what we call a closed vision or an open vision. Okay? A closed vision is like I'm awake, maybe my eyes are closed. Maybe I'm praying for someone and I see pictures in my head. Okay, that's a closed vision. Okay? My physical eyes are closed and I'm seeing something with my spiritual eyes. We can say the eyes of your mind, the eyes of your heart, but I'm seeing something with my spiritual eyes while my physical eyes are closed. A closed vision. Okay? An open vision is when my eyes are open. Say I'm speaking to you all right now like I'm doing. I'm seeing you all right now as I'm doing this. And maybe I see all of a sudden the Sahara Desert in Africa right now. And there's something that God's sharing about that. Just maybe like in this section right here, right? Maybe I'm seeing something, but I'm looking at you. At the same time I'm looking at you, I actually also see something else happening right here. Okay, that's an open vision because my eyes are open when I had a vision. That makes sense? It should be pretty clear. Okay, closed vision, open vision. So when someone says, you know, I had an open vision, I'll go, oh, you had an open vision. Ooh, that's deep. It's not all that deep. Their eyes are open. Okay, that's all it was. That's all it was. Okay, all right. So if we don't understand some things sometimes, stuff can sound super spiritual and is unattainable when it really is normal. Okay? All right? So then you have the hearer. And so the person who's a hearer will hear what the Spirit is saying, and it's usually it's not usually an audible voice, although biblically and even in life experiences, people have heard the audible voice of God. Now, the reason why that's distinguished from just hearing spiritually is because when you hear the audible voice of God, you're actually hearing God's voice with your physical ear. So this spirit who normally communicates through silent thoughts when he speaks to us, sometimes he can communicate and call your name out. Like last week when we were reading about how Samuel was hearing his name being called out, and he ran to Eli saying, "Hey, Eli, okay, here I am. You called me." Eli said, "No, I didn't call you. Go back and lay down." But Samuel was hearing the audible voice of God. So when we were saying that phrase, audible voice of God, that's people just trying to distinguish that he spoke to me the way I thought it was another human being talking to me. I heard it with my physical ear. I heard it with my auditory nerve. Okay? But for the most part, if you are a hearer, you actually will hear in your head, like no one else around you will hear it, you'll hear it in your head, and even though it could be a thought, it has a sound in your head. Like, you hear it, but you don't hear it. Now, if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, then you're not a hearer. All right, don't worry about it. You're not a hearer. Others of you are like, that's what it is. How many of you are hearers? You're like, that happens to me right there. Okay. How many of you are seers? All right, getting pictures and stuff all the time. Okay, good. All right, so then you guys are seers, you have the hearer, and then you have the knower. Okay, the knower, you just know something. You can't explain how you know, you just know. No physical evidence to support why you believe what you believe. Nothing has happened. You just know. You didn't see a picture. You didn't hear anything in your head. It's just a spontaneous conviction. It just came, and you know it for a fact. And sometimes people say you got to know your knower, right? How many of you are knowers? Okay, all right. How many of you are know-it-alls? Don't point your spouse. That's not cool. Okay. No. So the thing about it is, if you see this and go, that's me. Like I just know stuff. Here's the deal. Because there's not all the evidence that other people would need to agree with you, don't let that cause you to second guess what you know. Because there's just that conviction, and you might not be able to explain to other people because it's not logical. You can't. Matter of fact, God didn't even give you the explanation, so you can't explain. You just go, I just know. I know we're supposed to take this exit right here. Well, how? You've never been in the city. I know I have never been here, but we need to take this right here. So there's a conviction there. So then also there's the feelers. There's the feelers. Sometimes people will just feel things. Let's go to the next slide, please. They just feel things, and you feel it in your body, or you can feel some emotions. For example, maybe there's like a word of knowledge, okay? Oftentimes people who flow in healing words of knowledge, they actually feel something on their body, okay? Maybe my right elbow starts tingling. I go, hey, God wants to heal somebody's right elbow, right? Or whatever. I remember one time I felt this sharp pain go from my elbow to my wrist, and I was like, okay, who in here has, and it wasn't my pain, like that doesn't happen to me, okay? Now, if that happens to me all the time, and then I'm up here speaking, and it happens again, that's not a word of knowledge. Okay, that's my issue. Right? I came in here with that pain, that's my pain, I own it, right? So, but if that doesn't happen to me, and all of a sudden, and especially if I'm expecting words of knowledge. Man, the pain shooting. All right, who's got a pain shooting? Lady came up, says, yeah, I just feel it going right through here. And so we just prayed over her arm, and she said she felt like this hot water go throughout her forearm, and all the pain was gone. Okay, so that's that's an example of feeling something really in your body. Now, some of you have this kind of discernment where sometimes you can feel somebody else's pain, right? Maybe you're praying for them, and all of a sudden you get really, really sad, and you're experiencing or you're feeling that person's sadness or depression or whatever, or maybe even joy. You know, it's not just all negative stuff. You should be able to discern good stuff too. Okay, be wary of folks. All they discern is bad stuff. That's not balanced. Okay, that's all I'm saying about that. All right, but you can feel some things in your body, or you can feel emotions. You can be a feeler, or maybe God's speaking to you, and you just feel this sense of whatever kind of direction. You know, when Pastor Sam was up here sharing, and notice how he said, as he delivered his word to the young people, he says, "I feel like the Lord was saying," right? Or I'm sensing that the Lord's saying, okay? Because it's a sense that we have, right? It's a sense that but he's matured over some time, right? So you can feel it, you can sense it, whatever. But that could be a way that you are perceiving most frequently, okay? All right. So how many of you are feelers? Okay, good. Now, how many of you actually had at least two of these? Yeah, look around the room. Keep your hands up. You see? That's normal. Now, how many of you have experienced all four of these? Okay, good. Okay, so if you have not experienced all four of these, be on the lookout. Okay, now here's what I'm encouraging you to do. Maybe I'm not normally a seer, okay, but I start getting some pictures. Let me try to ask somebody who's a seer. All right. Help me understand, is this the Lord, or is this the pizza I had at midnight? Help me discern what's happening here, because I'm about to take the plunge, because I'm a man of faith. So I'm going to do what God tells me to do. I just want to make sure that God's telling me to do it, not dominoes. That's all I'm saying. I just want to know what's happening here. All right? So you can lean into one of these and go, okay, I see this, this is making sense. I can see myself on this list somewhere. Now, if you're a person saying, nope, I don't see myself on any one of these. I don't see one of these at all. All right? What I'm telling you to do now that you have read them, you've learned about them, pay attention. That's all. Because God's speaking to you. Pay attention. And again, maybe you might be in that category I was talking about earlier. If you're not expecting God to hear anything, all right, then you might not see yourself on this list. Okay? But once you start expecting, you'll be able to see how you perceive the most. Okay? It's not the only way you perceive, but how you could perceive the most. And it could be one primary way. It could be a couple. You know, maybe it could be 50-50. I don't know. You know? But it doesn't really matter to me. I don't care. What I care about is that you learn that it's up to you to learn how to perceive. Okay? Learn how to perceive. And if you're wanting to grow in some other areas where you don't perceive that way normally, then when you start getting information from God or messages from God in those areas, run it past some people. Okay? But also in the areas that you do perceive the most, start obeying what you're getting. Step out of what you're getting. If it's for you, it's like step out in what you're getting. If it's even for somebody else, step out in what you're getting. All right? Just don't know. It's just back and forth. The other, let's see, this is what, Wednesday? Yeah, just this week. We're actually in one of our services, and some thoughts came to my mind about a particular individual. I was like, I wonder if that's a word for them. Well, I don't know. Right? So then during, like, service is over, we're hanging out, talking, all this kind of stuff, and the person comes up to me, gives me a big hug. I'm like, I wonder if this is the time. Nah, no. And watch this, watch this. Then they go, do you have a word for me? Row. Look, I was like, wow, talk about, God will hold you accountable, right? Talk about accountability. I was like, what? Shut up. Like God just called me out, right? Yeah. I mean, you know, it is what it is. That was this week. Tonight I'm teaching y'all how to obey God. It is what it is, right? You need to trust and believe there's God. Right, listen, I'm in this thing with you, right? We're all growing. I've told you, I have times where I've nailed it. It was amazing. And times I was like, oh. I'm sharing that with you so you know you're not alone. You can stop tripping, and God might call you out. That's all I'm saying. Let's all stand. So as we learn to just increase our sensitivity, I think it's helpful to look at these. These are categories, right? These 4 categories of ways that we can perceive. And as you think about that, you go, okay, this happens to me more frequently, right? And I can lean into it more. And I can know that like this is a thing, right? Like this is real. Like this is a thing. This is what's happening to me. I see a lot of stuff I just didn't think was God. I just, you know, I see pictures and visions and dreams and stuff like that. Or I hear stuff in my head. I just thought I was crazy. Let me make this side note. How many of you know when the devil's talking to you? Raise your hand. The rest of y'all don't know? Right? Tempting thoughts. Right? Like, you know. Isn't it somehow we can recognize his voice more easily? But we're God's children. You think God wants it that way? He wants us to be sensitive to him. And the thing is, you don't even have to be praying to Satan for him to speak to you. Right? We can recognize that that's all him. But learning how to be a child of God, it is countercultural. It's a new way of life. So the Holy Spirit helps us learn how to walk with God and how to be even more confident when God speaks to us, to recognize when God's speaking to us, when he's showing us something, when he's telling us something, when he's causing us to feel something, or when he's causing us to hear something, or just to know something. We just know that it's him, no matter how he does it. We can just perceive it. If it's a bumper sticker, we can perceive it. If it's a word from a message, we can perceive it. If we're reading the scriptures and the words jump off the page, we can perceive it. If it's through a conversation we have with a friend, we can perceive it. If it's through a conversation we have with a stranger and they're just saying just normal stuff, we go, oh, whoa, God just spoke to me right there. We can perceive it. You see, because we're sensitive. We're sensitive. Father, thank you so much that you desire to speak to your children. We have access to you because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. We are honored that you chose to speak to us. You saved us, brought us into your family, and now you're teaching us what it means to be your child, how to live with you as our Father in heaven. And you're showing us how to involve you in our lives, to be led by your Spirit and the words you speak to us and the messages that you communicate to us, whether they're through dreams and visions or mental pictures, whether it's through just knowing in our spirit, whether it's feeling it in our physical body or emotions, or just hearing it in our head and our spirit. God, you're teaching us how to perceive the spiritual communication that comes from you. And we are eager to learn it. We are eager to learn it, not just for ourselves, but even for other people. We are eager to learn it. So thank you for the added confidence we've gained tonight by just seeing these 4 ways of perceiving, by just seeing how we can experience you in a variety of ways, but also identifying the ways that we might perceive you the most. Father, bless your children, bless their perceiving, and help them walk closer with you, deeper with you, hearing you, confident that they're hearing you. Help them to step out in faith and boldness and courage, and to just take risk for the sake and cause of Jesus Christ. I pray this over them in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. If you need prayer tonight, I want you guys coming up. If you need prayer team coming up and have the freedom to minister to folks tonight. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week.